Mac is and oh. And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network covering IU women's basketball. This is our 87th episode, recorded on Thursday, November 30th, 2023. I'm your host, Jeff Marlowe. I'm joined tonight by my co-host, Kathy Amos. Tonight, we will be breaking down, again, as Kathy and I said, your number 17 Indiana Hoosiers 67-59 victory over the Maine Black Bears in Portland. This brings their record to 6-1 for the season. And as usual, we'll start this show with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And Kathy, I'm going to go here, and I don't remember the exact basket, so you might be able to come in, but I'm pretty sure that one of the last few baskets Mac had tonight made her the all-time number one field goal make person in Indiana women's history. So that's going to be my banner moment as Mackenzie Holmes continues to climb up the career stats. Tonight, she becomes the number one Indiana Hoosier. Tied. So she ties it with being the most field goals made in the history of Indiana women's basketball. So that's our banner moment for tonight. And our banner moment is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, presenting sponsor of the Back Home Network, who includes the Assembly Call and Crimson Cast. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating their products for schools in their existing line. You are bound to find something for you or anyone in your life that just loves great collegiate gear. Right now, they have some retro-inspired snapback hats, and along with other things. The bomber jackets are still out there and are really cool. Not only do you get quality apparel, but you are supporting an Indiana-based business that has its roots in the Kelley School of Business. Go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME23. That's promo code HOME, HOME23, to get 15% off your entire first order. Again, HOME23 for 15% off. And again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. And a couple things in news. First of all, Sarah Scalia was named to the Big Ten Honor Roll for the second week for this week, which she had been the Player of the Week last week, so second week in a row that she was on the Honor Roll. Caitlin Clark of Iowa was the Player of the Week for this past week. And Kathy, big news out of Bloomington today. Indiana found their guy on the football side. Very quick search, thinking that Tom Allen was released on Sunday morning. And today they announced the hiring of James Madison coach Curt Cignetti as the new coach, the 30th head coach in the history of IU football. And I know people are going to say, well, this is a women's basketball podcast. Yes, it is. But we also like to keep up with what's going on. But I also want to bring it into this, and I'm going to get Kathy's opinion on this. We've seen what the right person, the right coach, has meant to this Indiana women's program and Terry Morin. Again, I think you can get that sense if you can find the right person, the Bill Mallory type, what can be done with Indiana football. Kathy, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yes, this game tonight was not pretty. I would say until that 7-minute mark left in the game in the fourth quarter, it almost looked like our team didn't think they could actually lose this game. Outside of Mackenzie Holmes and then in the second half, Sydney Parrish, it just looked like no one was really playing with that hustle that we've seen. But they corrected the ship, and that's definitely, I think, in a large part to the culture that Coach Morin has built. To your point, getting the right person at the helm can help you, go through these stormy waters that we were having for, over 3/4 of the game tonight and still come out on the right side of where we want our ship to land, which is a win, right? Like at this point, I'd rather, win this game ugly than play a really great game and end up losing this game, right? Or which wouldn't have happened, but you get my point. Like it's still a win at the end of the day. The wheels aren't falling off of our season or anything that you want to say about how Coach Morin is doing or anything like that. I think that this shows actually her good leadership. She made some really nice adjustments in that second half finally, really in the fourth quarter, I thought, to the zone, where we're trying to get a little bit more at that free throw line and keeping McKenzie down low as well. And they couldn't just completely collapse on McKenzie. So I thought she just made some nice adjustments again and kept the team with their head right, even though this was probably one of the worst games we've played this year in a long time. So to your point, yeah, getting the right person at the helm is extremely important for the entire program, but especially I think it showed up tonight.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a long, even though they got the win, I got a feeling it's going to be a long plane ride home. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people happy with the way they played. And I think, like you mentioned, for 3 quarters, the defense was not very good. I think you and I were commenting, we were on the Discord with some of the fans as well, that, Coach Morin said she gave them an F after the Stanford game. Well, through the first 3 quarters of the night, I'm not sure it was any better of a grade, but I thought the fourth quarter and but let's go ahead and get it. Let's move into this, Kathy. Let's go ahead and call this a pivotal play. I thought, to me, a pivotal play here. And she kind of went in and out in the fourth quarter, but I thought, especially in the fourth quarter, Lexi Bargesser's defense on and Simon really started to show up. I thought that we really struggled, obviously, with Simon because she scored 32. But I felt like in the fourth quarter, we really did a pretty good job, except for that one layup on the pick 6 she got. So I really wanted to get your thoughts about Lexi's play, especially in the fourth quarter, because I thought that was huge.
Yeah, I do too. So she had 25 in the first half, ended up with 34. And to your point, she had that again, just another one of those steals at the top of the key there against us with, just not real crisp in our passing again around the 3-point line. But to your point, so showed 25, she only scored 9. Take away those 2, Lexi really helped hold her to 7 points in that second half, which no one seemed to be able to do in the first half. She just seemed to score wherever she wanted to on the floor and at will. And yeah, I thought Lexi did a great job locking her down. So kind of along that lines, though, I think a pivotal point to me was in the first half on the other side of it was with Ann Simon and 2 steals right at the top of the key, back to back. And, to me, it was pivotal because not only did we do it once, we did it a second time. And then that third time, I like your phrase, a pick 6 for that, pick 2. I thought those steals from her were quite pivotal because, again, it was highlighting the lack of effort and focus I think our team had for well over 3 quarters of the game tonight. I think the fourth quarter really started getting better, but especially that last 7 minutes. But for the first 30 plus minutes of the game, we just didn't have any focus. And I thought all of those steals from Ann Simon in particular showed how we weren't executing on either end of the floor.
Well, and especially with those, I'll kind of comment on that too. I thought that's a great point, that there was still a relatively close game. We were behind, but it was like a 3, maybe 4, 2 or 3 point game at that point. But she gets those 2 straight steals and layups, and now all of a sudden it's a 6-point game. They hit a free throw or 2. The next thing you know, you're down 8, and you're heading. Or actually, they actually got down 10 and made a bucket right before the half. So they were very easily looking at possibly a double-digit deficit heading into halftime. And so I also want to kind of go back to that, I think, as a pivotal play. And I think it was McKenzie who got the bucket right toward the end of the first half, somewhere there in the last 30 seconds or so. But to me, that was a big bucket because the fact that we were able to me, because I always felt like as a coach, there's a psychological barrier with double digits. When you're down double digits at the half, that seems way worse than 9. And it's not. I understand that 9 and 10 is 1 point, but psychologically, it's a huge thing. So only be down 8. I say only because, again, you were right. We weren't playing very well. We've already said they just, it was psychological. But even then, it again, come out in the third quarter, they really felt like there was no, and I'll come back to you on this because kind of pill play. Again, watch on TV. And by the way, for any of you who didn't join us in the Discord, we all were making comments about the broadcast night and how we're probably never going to complain about Big Ten Plus ever again. The Student U predictions might have been doing better, but there wasn't much energy. And that seemed to be something you and I were talking about in the text and in the Discord, very reminiscent of the Stanford game.
Yeah, absolutely. They looked flat from the very start, and it was almost everyone. I mean, outside of Mackenzie, everyone. I mean, we had I didn't write all the scores down, but what I can tell you is of our starters, Yarden, Chloe Moore McNeil, and Sydney Parrish had collectively 3 points in the first half, and they were all from the free throw line.
Yep.
At one, I know for sure Yarden was 0 for 5 at one point in the first half. Sydney got herself in foul trouble again. Kudos to her, by the way, actually, she didn't. She only had one foul. So I'm not quite sure why she only played. Yeah, she was struggling and she only played 12 minutes in that first half. So she was kind of non-existent in that first half. And Yarden, I don't know, that might be one of the worst games we've seen from her, I think, this year. Chloe as well. She just didn't look locked in defensively. She didn't look like she was locked in offensively, even though she ended up with on the books only 2 turnovers. I felt like there were a lot of near misses from Chloe as well, kind of running at the top. And they just those 3 in particular didn't look locked in. And while Sarah had hit 3 3-pointers to have 9 points, you fast forward to the second half, she ends up with only 1 free throw in the entire second half. So, she wasn't fantastic the first half and then completely disappeared on us in the second half. Oh, by the way, for those of you keeping track, that missed free throw from Sarah was her first one of the year. So definitely not going to complain about her free throw shooting and that one miss that she had. But the rest of her game just, again, didn't seem locked in. So it was almost top to bottom, where they just didn't seem like they came and were ready to go. It was almost like a letdown game, or like what you were saying, a trap game. They go down to Florida, down to Fort Myers. They played 2 very high caliber teams, and they came out ready to go in both of those games, and they were locked in defensively and offensively. And here was the complete opposite of what we saw over Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And that is a little bit of the concern, that when they're having to travel. But again, this was one of those.
They traveled in Fort Myers too.
Right, exactly. And that's the other part about that as well. And I know people say that's a neutral game. I always felt as a coach, a neutral game was a road game, because you're out of your element, you're out of your normal routine. Yes, it may not be a home game for the other team, but I always wanted to approach those like road games. Like we had to be better than the other team, just because it was a mentality we wanted to have on the road. You didn't want to let the officials keep it, the other team around, make some calls, and all of a sudden now you're at the end, it's getting decided by free throws or some fluky thing at the end. But I totally agree with you on that. And then, and I felt like for the most of the part, we'll talk about her probably a little bit later, but even Mackenzie was kind of struggling. But I thought part of that was Maine's defense, because outside of Sarah, we were struggling so bad shooting the ball in the first half. They just collapsed. And then when we did get it to Mackenzie, there wasn't any room to work.
Yeah. And I still go back to what I've been saying the last few games that we've had. I still feel like our guards are not getting the ball into Mackenzie at a quick enough time where she has good position on them either. And someone asked in our Discord, Jeff, and maybe you can help my memory, was this the first time we played zone this year as well?
Against some zone, more than likely. Well, who did it? Princeton did it down at, and wasn't it Princeton or that did it down in Fort Myers, where they played that half court, that zone, and they kind of dropped back and they really slowed that pressing and dropped back into the zone. But as far as much as we saw it tonight, that was probably the most we've seen in any one game.
Yeah. But so, again, on a positive side, though, I would say, I think Sydney came out in that second half and really played immensely better. She looked like a completely different player from the first half to the second half. And, a pivotal play for me was when at 4:36 in that fourth quarter, she drove really aggressive to the basket, made her layup, got fouled, and hit her bucket for 1. And we finally took the lead at 57-54. And to me, that was really huge, because while it was only 3 points, it seemed like that gave our team a lot more energy, even though they had started picking up, but it started deflating Maine. And then, just not about a minute and a half later, we had that 3-pointer from Chloe Moore McNeil to make it 62-54. That really seemed to completely deflate the Maine balloon that we saw with them. And those two plays kind of really close together were, to me, pretty pivotal to the game.
Yeah, I really want to go back to that. That was one that I was going to cite too. So I appreciate you getting that in there. Was that drive and foul by Sid, because she'd hit a couple shots, but I really felt, again, back to the psychological part. For the first time since the first quarter, we had a lead, and not only did it lift us, but we also, as you said, deflated them. Because the big difference, again, only we're down 3 is we're still in possession, but there's a huge difference psychologically when you've been leading pretty much the whole game and now you're behind, and it just, there was time left there. So I don't think anything else I really want to bring up in the pivotal plays, Kathy, unless you got something else. We'll move on to some of the numbers.
No, I think that probably covers it for me.
I'll let you go first here on the notable numbers.
Yeah, I think one that we've been hearing Coach Moore and harp on over and over and over again is rebounding. And at the half, we were down 15 to 20 rebounding. Now we picked it up in the second half and ended up about even, but we ended up winning that margin by 36-35. But I just really felt that this really felt worse to me than that we actually out rebounded them by 1. And to me, it should have been more than 1. I just think Maine was out hustling us to almost every ball. It seemed like any 50-50 ball, but especially on the rebounding. I was surprised when I looked at that we actually ended up out rebounding them, but we really picked it up again that fourth quarter. Had it not been for that fourth quarter, we would have been out rebounded. But I think they still have some significant work to go in the rebounding area.
And that's been a little bit of an overarching concern for a couple of years. And we saw it more, obviously, when Mac was injured and not in the games. But we remember a couple of years ago coming on here and doing a post-game show where they just absolutely up at Michigan got out-rebounded something. I mean, it was like a almost 25-point margin or 25 rebound margin. So, yeah, I thought, at times I agree with you. But again, to find a way to end up basically getting even on the glass after we were down, like you said, 5 at the half, I thought was, it spoke well, but I also thought 2 things happened there. Maine started hitting more shots in the first half, so there were fewer rebound opportunities for us. And then we started hitting more shots down the stretch, which meant fewer rebound opportunities for them. So it kind of does go hand in hand. I'm going to go back to the one. I'm going to go back to the one that Coach Moore likes to talk a lot about, and we kind of have picked up on her phrase, sharing the sugar. I had them when I added it up, 21 assists on 25 made field goals tonight. I mean, that's 84% if I'm doing my math right, if your baskets are being assisted upon. So and that was and for as poor and for as rough an eye as I thought she had, because I really didn't think Chloe played all that well, she had 6 assists.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the one bright spot I thought we had from Chloe, was even with her near misses, she did turn a lot of her passes into assists and getting people the ball in the right place. But I again, just really feel that in general, our guards need to look a little sooner to Mackenzie and get that ball to her when she's established sooner. But yes, overall, our assist numbers are really good. In fact, we had 3 other people with 4 in there. The surprising one is Mackenzie Holmes not having one. And I think that was in part, we just weren't quite shooting it as crazy as we were down in Fort Myers. But she definitely, I thought overall Mac had a really nice game though, but I was just surprised to look here at the assists and not see any.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll come back to, well, actually I'll let you go first. Any other numbers you want to point out?
Yeah, surprising to me was actually points in the paint, where we were almost even with Maine, 30 for us and 28 for them. And it was about the same at halftime too. It was actually, we were behind 12-18 at points in the paint. And again, that was kind of surprising because we've, started seeing, and again, I think it comes back to not Mackenzie, because, Mackenzie put up 22 of those 30 points. I just felt like our guards weren't quite as aggressive as what we have been seeing them, especially Sarah. We've really seen a lot more of driving of the ball from Sarah, and not just, expecting her to be only a 3-point specialist. Up until this game, I felt that Sarah had really expanded her game and was doing a lot more than just 3-point shooting. And she was accounting for a lot more points in the paint. And so that one was a little surprising. I didn't expect to see tonight.
Yeah. And Yeah, I agree with you about the passing. I think that's at the very minimum, they're a half a beat late. They get it to her about a half a beat late, and that really doesn't get her into a position where she can really do some things with it. I also have noticed, and I wonder about this a little bit, and whether it's now just become such habit, but it really seems like as I'm watching, Mac almost always comes back to the left hand now in the post. I very rarely see her
Yeah.
going to the right hand to finish. Now she did there on that one bucket tonight where she got the hoop and harm toward the end of the game. But a lot of her catches are catch it in the lane or catch it on the block, but come back to make her move and come back to the left hand. I'd like to see her change it up just a little more, and I think that would help a little bit with the defense, because I think sometimes after a while you start to see that on film. You're like, hey, don't go for the fake. She's coming back left hand. That's the kind of thing I would see and would be putting into a scouting report with that as well. So the other number I'm going to point out here is, for as sloppy as I felt like we played, we only had 10 official turnovers.
I know. I was looking at that too, Jeff. I was going to comment on that same thing. Again, I think it felt worse because I think we had a lot of near misses. There is no category for near misses. The same thing as, Lexi, as much as you may not look at her stat line with her 14 minutes and think, oh, well, she didn't really contribute a whole lot. There's just some things that you have to see in the game, and you can't just solely look at a box score. And to me, that's one of them is, only 10 turnovers. That's great that they ended up with only 10, but boy, it could have been a lot worse, I think.
Yeah. And so the only other thing here, I want to get your thoughts. And again, kind of second game in a row. And they didn't play a ton of minutes, but very little production off the bench. But that being said, we actually outscored them 4-0 in bench points.
Yeah, well, they didn't really need their bench, I guess, when you have two players put up 34 and 14 points respectively. So,
hey,
but yeah, to your point, yes, you're 100% correct. Our bench, again, outside of Lexi's defense, didn't really show up a whole lot today.
And I know we don't ever give the game ball out to an opponent, but let's talk about Ann Simon. 34 points.
Career night.
34 points, career high. And she was only 3 of 13 from beyond the arc. This could have been worse. 11 rebounds, 5 steals. All right, for Ann Simon. So just real quickly, Kathy, I know we don't see them very often, but we'd had done a little preview on this. She looked like somebody who had been the America East Player of the Year a couple years ago.
Yeah, and she looked like she's well on pace to do that again tonight. Kudos to her. She played a hell of a game. I was just really impressed by her play. Her steals, it was on both sides, right? Again, like her defense at the top of the key there and getting those, she had 5 steals, and I feel like at least 3 of them, I know for sure 3, if not 4 of them were, again, passes that we were trying to make around that 3-point line. Again, just kind of lack of focus on our part, but great hustle on Ann Simon's part too. Yeah, I was really impressed. It was, if I, not an Indiana fan, I'd take myself out of this. I enjoyed watching her tonight, but I didn't enjoy any of it.
Yeah, but I do think we need to give a little bit of kudos to a kid who played a great game against us and on an IU podcast. So all right, so let's go on to the game ball. And Kathy, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it has
by the way, real quick before Kathy goes, if you're watching us here on the live YouTube feed for the game ball, you will notice that we have the winner so far of the game ball scrolling across the bottom. So far, we have Yarden Garzone with 2, Sarah Scalia with 2, Sydney Parrish and Mackenzie Holmes each with 1.
Yeah, sorry, I'm being derelict on my producing duties tonight. So game ball for me is going to be Mackenzie Holmes. I think she, especially that first half, she really took control of what we could take control of, which was very little. But I thought of anybody, she probably played the most complete game. Excuse me, ending up with 22 points. She was 9-11 from the field. As you mentioned, she's now tied for first for made field goals in Indiana career history. She's got 4, she made 4 of 4 free throws and 7 rebounds. In 37 minutes, I thought overall she played the most complete game. For me, it's going to be Mackenzie Holmes.
Yeah, I'm going to go. I was really kind of torn on this one because my initial reaction was Mackenzie, but then Sydney had such a great game down the end. And like I said, she really came back from nowhere. Because she had nothing at the half. She was scoreless at halftime. And so Sydney finished in the second half. She had 17 points in the second half. So, but I'm going to go with Mackenzie here because like you said, kind of the full body of the work that Mackenzie was there from kind of beginning to end. fairly consistent, 9 of 11. She had 2 blocks, as you mentioned, a steal, but she did have 2 turnovers. But again, with as much as she was being surrounded and being collapsed upon, and again, I thought we didn't do a very good job of getting her the ball in spots, and I also thought we didn't do a very good job of getting open and giving her places to look to as well. But again, she was being collapsed on by 2 or 3. And let's be honest, again, they were on the road. And I thought, we were talking about this a little bit in the Discord. We talked a little bit about it in the group text. There were some fouls. We were looking at each other like, that's a foul. And it was on us. And there were other parts of the game, especially in the lane with IU on the offensive end, that didn't get called. And I'm not going to complain about the fishing because it's just life on the road. But for her to only have 2 turnovers, so I'm going to go with Mackenzie Holmes. So Mackenzie Holmes will get her second game ball of the year, putting her in a 3-way tie now with Yarden Garzone and Sarah Scalia. All right. So let's move on to the Grace Berger hardest worker of the game. And again, if you're watching with us on the live YouTube feed, you'll notice that we have the scroll so far for the season going there. And right now it's Lexi Bargesser and Mackenzie Holmes with 2 each, Lene Beaumont and Lily Meister with 1 apiece. And Kathy, I'll let you go again first on this one.
Yeah. So maybe this sounds strange, but for me, I'm going to give mine to Sydney Parrish in this account. She did not have a good first half. And, I think I saw she only played around 12 minutes in that first half, really was not producing. And I don't know what was said to her at halftime, but she came out and she adjusted. And I thought she played the second half probably the best of any of our players. She came out on fire, and then she ended up with 17 points. So to your point during the game ball, she worked hard to me to get herself back into the game and righted the ship, and, ended up with only 1 foul, which was a concern coming into the game. And it was definitely a concern after Fort Myers. So it's good to see that she was able to ended up playing 32 minutes, played that entire second half, and only got 1 foul that was in the first half. So she played an entire half, no fouls. She ended up with only 1 turnover on the half and 10 rebounds with a double-double. So to me, that second half, epitomizes what we want from a hardest worker person. So for me, that's who I am voting for.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with you here. I'm going to go with Sid. But my first initial gut reaction at the time watching the game in that fourth quarter, my first thought was, Lexi Bargesser, because it's not showing up in stats, but her defensive effort. So I want to make sure we get Lexi mentioned here in this segment. Honorable mention, but I'm going to go with you. I'm going to totally go 100% with you. I thought Sydney Parrish in the second half, and especially the fourth quarter, was the big difference in the game. And so we're going to give her the Grace Berger hardest worker of the game, and that's going to give her first hardest worker of the game for the year tonight. So congratulations to Mackenzie on the game ball. Congratulations to Sydney on the Grace Berger hardest worker of the game.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So we'll go into our next segment, and we get a few days here, but IU will be back in action on Sunday. They will be playing December the 3rd against Stetson. That game is 2:00 Eastern, 1 Central. It will be on Big Ten Plus. I don't think any of us are going to complain about Big Ten Plus. Hopefully, Dr. Clavio and his students will be putting together a good production. They are the Hatters. That is their nickname. They are the Stetson Hatters, located in DeLand, Florida. IU is 1-0. We've played them once against the Hatters. That game was all the way back in 1999, a 91-43 win at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. So far, Stetson is 1-6. Their sole win is against Iona on November the 18th, 71-62. Excuse me. And they were playing Weber International tonight. And so they were in the process of playing as well. So that, again, Stetson will come in, 1-6, 2-6, 1-7, somewhere in that area with that. And Kathy, why don't you talk to us a little bit about their coach and personnel a little bit?
Yes. So funny joke. I'm not going to take credit, but they call it DeLand, Florida, because it's by DC. It's so terrible.
You did that on purpose. I was taking a drink and you almost made me
when I saw they were from DeLand, I'm like, I have to say it. Okay. Back to the program. Okay. So they are coached by Lynn Bria. She's the head coach there. She is in her 15th full season with Stetson. She is their all-time winningest coach at 232 and 178, which is a 566 average. As a team, I mainly concentrated here on the team stats. So they only average around 55 points per game. Interesting. Maine tonight scored 59. They only averaged 57 too. So luckily our second half kept them from surpassing a whole lot more than that because they were well on pace to outpace that. So hopefully we don't see a repeat of that with Stetson and we completely hold them to well under their 55 points per game on Sunday. In terms of shooting, they shoot around 35% field goal, and they are really not a good three-point threat. They're only shooting 23% from three-point land. They average 16 turnovers as well, so they're a bit sloppy with it, but they do force 17 turnovers. And an interesting fact I thought when I was looking at their roster is they've had 9 different starters so far this year. So I know for sure there's Kia Turner, has only played 2 games previously. She had started almost every game in her previous 3 years. And I couldn't find it, but I'm wondering if she might be hurt. So I'm wondering if they're having, maybe an injury thing, at least with Kia Turner, as well as maybe just struggling to kind of find their true starters. So they've had 9 different starters this year.
Yeah. And the right now their best player seems to be, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, Jamia Turner.
Yeah.
Is who we're looking at. But yeah, and you look at that, Kathy, you talk about Lynn Bria, she's a 57% career winning percentage. So it makes you wonder a little bit what is going on with their team this year. Is it injuries? Did they graduate several players? Because you don't win 57% of your games by starting out 1-6 every year. So it really makes me wonder a little bit of what they've got going on, maybe roster wise, or what's happened to maybe the last couple of years. So with that, but that game will be on Sunday, 2:00 Eastern, 1 Central. Again, that game will be on Big Ten Plus. All right. So again, we will be up on Sunday after the game. So roughly about make sure I get the times right here. I have to look back at roughly 4:00 Eastern, 3:00 Central. We'll have the Doing the Work post-game show here on live on YouTube, or you can get with wherever you get your podcast. Want to remind all of our fans that you can get or you can tune into Assembly Call tomorrow night. They will be on after the Maryland game with the men. Also, again, a shout out to our other people in the back, our other groups in the Back Home Network. Crimson Cast had a really good podcast today about the new football hire. And then, of course, they also do a women's basketball podcast as well as part of the Back Home Network. So I want to shout out to them with that. So again, we'll be back on Sunday. Kathy, any final thoughts you have for tonight?
No, I have lots of final thoughts, I think. But what should come out of my mouth is a different thing, I guess. No, I would say this was, since I'll be candid, I started watching the team really closely that year they made the NIT run. And ever since then, since I've been really watching them in those years, this is probably one of the worst games I think I've seen them play. Even worse than Stanford, mainly because of the caliber of the team. I didn't expect them to lose by 30 to Stanford. I expected them to lose, but not that much. And no, it was not a great game. But I just thought they looked lackadaisical. I thought they looked not ready to go. And it was top to bottom. Starters, people on the bench, they just weren't ready for this game. And I feel like maybe they were overlooking Maine. They weren't taking them seriously. I don't know what was going on tonight. Am I concerned that this is the tone for the rest of the year? No, I'm really not there yet. I'm not hitting the panic button. I saw enough of them down in Fort Myers to know they have within them to be a really great team. And I really do have a lot of faith in Coach Morin and her entire staff to be able to keep the ship in the right direction. They ended up winning this game. They righted it that last, quarter, 7 minutes, whatever point you want to take of the game where they really turned it around. And I think that we'll see this on Sunday with Stetson. I think that they'll be ready to go with that is my prediction for that game. And I think that they are going to win that game on Sunday quite handily by quite a bit. And I think we see a lot more time for a bench on Sunday, just because I think that is how the, mentality of this program is. The culture of this program is to go back, put that work in, go look at the film and correct a lot of the things that we saw tonight. And I just don't think we'll see stuff like this very often, if much at all, again this year.
Yeah, and obviously I've always said this again, I'd rather win ugly than lose pretty. And
Yep.
a win tonight's better than a bad loss. We would have really felt like it was a horrible loss. But I think there's time to get some of these things straightened out. It is a concern that they have gone out a couple times now away from Assembly Hall and have not gotten off to the best starts, or they've looked lethargic. With that. So, but they get a chance here now. I was looking at the schedule and I was trying to pull it up on my screen as I was listening to you. They get Stetson on Sunday.
Yep.
And then they're going to go to Rutgers on the 9th. And then after that, they get Evansville and Bowling Green in between the Rutgers game in Illinois on New Year's Eve in Bloomington.
Mm-hmm.
So a chance here, because Rutgers is struggling and has been for a while, but they need to win that game on the road. All right. You don't want to go on the road in the Big Ten to Rutgers and really lose. That would not help you in the overall scheme of where you want to finish in the conference, because the best teams are going to go to Rutgers and win. But you got a chance now to maybe run off a little bit of a run here. You're already into one. You've won, 4 or 5 in a row now since then, but you at least maybe have a chance to come back against Stetson, who shouldn't be very good. Rutgers is struggling. Then you get Evansville. And as I said, they get a chance maybe at home to get a little healthier, get some rhythm back to them as well. So, but right now, and again, I think you also look at it this way, Kathy, if you're going to have struggles, better to have them in November, early December than in February or March. And so again, is it where we want them to be? No, but Coach Morton said this a couple weeks ago when I was at the game and the press conference. She wasn't happy with the way they were playing. She used the word soft, and I got a feeling she might have used that word a little bit more with them tonight. Now I know Ari was telling us in the Workaholics here that Ari was saying they were all kind of sounding like not too concerned about it after the game. I got a feeling by the time they get back tomorrow and look at the film and sit down and talk about it, there's going to be some things said about effort and toughness. And I think that's going to be something that they look at. So those are kind of my last thoughts for the game.
Yeah. Record wise, they're where I thought they would be 6-1, right? Again, record wise. But there are some things that are a little more rough than I was expecting. I didn't expect their defense to drop off this much as it kind of has felt it. We've seen this year. This is multiple games now, I think, where our defense, especially in the first half, has come out and been kind of soft, to your point, and not quite as down in their stance and as up in their faces as we've seen in the past. So to me, that's the one concerning piece I'm really starting to get concerned about, is some of their defensive effort. And defense is effort, right? And so is rebounding. And right now, it doesn't feel like we've got it kind of firing on all cylinders the way we have seen the last 2 or 3 years. But do I feel like this season is going to be completely lost because of that? No, I think that Coach Morin's still going to coach the way that the National Coach of the Year that she was last year can coach, and she'll have this team playing by Big Ten Conference the way we need them to.
I do think, and I don't think tonight was the situation. I do think against better teams. Now, they were able to, I didn't think it showed up as bad against Tennessee, but I still think teams that have athleticism are going to give us problems. And that's been a problem for a while.
For years.
Yes. Yeah. And so that's where, I totally agree with you on that. So if you want to see us do the show live and be a part of the live chat.
Sorry.
It's our show.
Not our best night tonight either.
It's our show. We're going to own it. It's our show. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Backhome Network. Again, that's relatively new since we've changed a few things. That's youtube.com/@Backhome Network. You can be a part of our private community as well. Find out more at assemblycall.substack.com. Special thanks to John Ringer of Riggs Design for designing our logos. Also, if you've been on Substack or if you've been with the YouTube page and you've seen some of our new artwork and graphics there, kudos to John for helping design some of that stuff for us on the templates. Also, a big thank you to Bob Thompson for our music that you hear throughout the broadcast. And thanks to all of you for being here in the YouTube chat and for listening on your favorite podcast venue. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you on Sunday. Until then, keep your elbows in, your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
Whew. Well, we survived another one, both the game and a show. Good job.
And I want to point out, Quang brings up a good point. It was 54-54 with 5 minutes basically to go, and they win by 8. So, it basically ended up being a 13-5 run over that. And with that
4:36 when Sydney made that drive for 2 that gave us our first lead.
Yeah.
It was. I had a bad feeling about this game after that first half, especially. It was not pretty. But you know what? We won, and hopefully they'll learn from it. I'm a little surprised. Well, maybe Coach Morin doesn't want to talk about it in the press conference like she kind of had the last few.
Right.
But I would think she's going to be a little more concerned, like you said, maybe behind closed doors.
And the only thing there about that is Terry doing a good job of maybe trying to protect a little bit her team after she's called them out once already. But it also makes me wonder, we've speculated a little bit about Mackenzie's knee and stuff. Joel, who was in the Workaholics here tonight, mentioned same thing, a little bit about her leg. But it also makes me wonder that this time of the year, or do you have some of the kids who are, battling a little bit of illness? Are they, I'm not even trying to go down to the COVID line here. I'm just talking about a common cold that may be going through the team, or maybe a little flu bug, something like that.
Yep.
And that can help. I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just saying that could be a reason why we might have felt like they looked lethargic, to a certain degree. But again, I think we know they can play better. I think they know it. And to a certain degree, it makes me wonder. And I get your thoughts on this before we head out of here.
Yeah.
Sometimes expectations can be a pretty heavy weight. And I just wonder some of that, even though they've been around for a while, they weren't the ones that had to be that leader. That Grace was always there for this group to be, the rock. And expectations can be a pretty weighty thing.
Yeah, I agree with that too. They're no longer the chip on the shoulder. We got to go out and prove it to people team. They're the one being hunted now.
Yep.
So just in case anyone's curious too, that for those of you still listening, since we talk about it every once in a while, the Mackenzie watch show that we have. So we already mentioned she's tied now for field goals made all time. She's 338 points behind Tyra. She's averaging now 18 points a game. She needed to average 17. So she's on pace still to take over first place there. And then in terms of block shots, that's the other one that's probably well within reach. She needed to average about 1.6 per game, and she's averaging 2.3 after tonight. So she needs about 50 more blocks to take first place there. Rebounds are probably well out of reach, but she's probably inching up on that. I could probably tell you if she's moved up on that list. I have it handy.
The blocks may end up being a close one by the end of the season.
That one might be. Yeah, it depends. I mean, she started out with Eastern Illinois, and that really bolstered her. She got 4 in that game. So, and then 1, 1, 1, 0. And then the last couple of games, she's gotten 2. So she keeps getting around 2. She's going to surpass that. So let's see. She's now at 822 rebounds. Where is that on my sheet? This is really great. So now she is in 7th place for rebounds. So she has moved up to 7th, and she's about 50 rebounds behind Rachel Bostic for 6th place. So she'll probably move up a little bit, but I don't think she'll take Denise Jackson or Amanda Cahill. Or
at the rate she's going, she would need to average about that. At the average she's getting, that's about 7 games worth of rebounds to get to the next spot. So.
Exactly. So.
All right, Kathy.
Anyway,
I know you got to work tomorrow. So do
yes.
I, but I know you get up a little earlier than I do. So we'll head out of here. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. We'll be back on Sunday with Doing the Work postgame show.
Yep. Good night, everyone.
Night.